Hey, all right. So anyway, I'm not supposed to smoke in here, but I really want to light this up. Ah. Anyway, so I was staying with a friend who's probably like in his, I think he's like in his 50s, and he drinks a lot. So he was like drinking, but that's not really an expensive habit, you know. And so he was letting me and another girl stay there. Um, but it reminded me of okay, so I was my entire life has been so fucked up, and people look at it and they're like, well, it was fucked up because of drugs. No, 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 no. It was not fucked up because of drugs. If any drugs it was fucked up by, it was fucked up by pharmaceutical drugs, period. Not by heroin, not by cocaine. Speed, if you do it long term, will give you some serious brain damage. And temporarily, you know, heroin, if you do an X-ray on someone's brain, it will look like they're definitely like their brain's not working well. But it's not permanent. As long as you're maintaining base levels of oxygen, it's okay. If you obviously, if your oxygen goes low, then you just die basically. Um, but there's not that much permanent brain damage from opiate use, thank God. So I still have most of my faculties, except that I talk like a California girl and I say like a lot. But I don't think that's brain damage from heroin. I think that's brain damage from something else. Um, no, I was talking to my girlfriend last night on the phone, and I was like, why do I talk like her? And I'll say like a lot sometimes. Mostly, I try to do that as like a character. Like I'm not actually trying to say like all the time because you don't need to say like 50 times every minute. It's unnecessary. Um. Anyway, so we're gonna. I'm not gonna start from the beginning, but I'm gonna talk about. Um, I went to. I was arrested with a boyfriend, and my mom. This is part of the money thing with my parents. I was in jail. I got arrested for trying to cash a check. It was like his mom's check, and he had gotten a bunch of her checks and sent me in there to cash it. And of course, it was a bad check, so I basically got caught or like accused of cashing a bad check. And so my parents bailed me out. They sent me to a really super expensive rehab. It was like $50,000. They emptied out their 401k for it. So they were, of course, everything was riding on this one thing that was so expensive. And of course, whatever my mother felt guilty for or whatever, and everything was packaged in this money thing. And they still are so horrible about money with me. They still feel like I'm this parasitical money leech. They get very upset when I make money, when I forget about asking to borrow any money from them, or even if I have a plan to pay back. They're they're very angry still that they gave me that money, because they shouldn't have given it to me. They shouldn't have given it to me. Period. Because they the thing is, you give regardless of the outcome. If you're giving something and you're like, well, if I'm gonna get an outcome, well then you're not. That's not really giving. I gotta turn the lights off because I'm totally gonna smoke this cigarette, and I hope that my burrito is not burning. Let's check on the burrito in my little. See, this is not. It's not so bad as long as there's no bed bugs. It's not so bad, or roaches. Ooh, it's getting burnt as hell. All right, I'm gonna take this burrito out right now and have it cooling, and we'll put this right here. Hi. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, good. All right. Fucking thing. All right. Hi. Anyway, so they bailed me out and sent me to this super expensive rehab, and everything went really great. It was like a 30-day rehab, and it was like the counselors like actually listened to me, and I told them that like what I really missed and what I really wanted. Hold on, let me grab this out. So I made a burrito, and then a bunch of you can't even see it. I made a burrito and then a bunch of tomatoes and onions cut up, baked. So that should be good to eat in a minute. And after it cools off. But anyway, so the counselor, like most of the counselors, like super cool. And they're like, yeah, girl, go. If you feel like the forest and the beach are like what nurtures you, then you need to go there. Blah blah blah. Like 90% of the therapists were amazing, and like occupational therapists told me I could do whatever I wanted, and that's what my problem was actually, because I could do whatever I wanted, and so I wasn't limited because I scored like 99 or whatever, 98. And of course, I told him I wanted to be an actress, and he was like, well, I don't know about that. You can do any other job, but I don't know about that one. People are just, they're haters. They're haters. So, anyway, but my main counselor woman, she was this Native American woman, and she had been molested by her dad, okay, on the reservation. And so she, projected onto me, basically, they did family therapy with my mom and my stepdad and my dad. And of course, my dad did emotionally incest me quite a bit growing up. Not sexually, but emotionally incested me. And so, anyway, she projected onto me that, like, that my dad was, the whole of the problem, right? No one person is the whole of the problem. When it comes to addiction, you can't scapegoat one person. And why do you need to blame people anyway? That's so lame. That's so old and stupid. Like, blaming people. It doesn't help anything. But anyway, so she blamed my dad, and then she also said that if I went back with my mom to Gold Canyon, or if I just like left or whatever, that I would relapse, and that I needed to go in for more counseling, because I have this attitude of like, it's all good. Sorry, but it actually is all good. Like, spiritually, I don't have a spiritual problem. All these other motherfuckers around me are my spiritual problem. I'm good. Like, I see the beauty of life, and all I want is to be more in the beauty of life. Cigarette smoking is a problem. Jumping into things before, maybe, like, jumping into things from a place of not being calm and happy and whole or something. Sure, I've got problems, but I'm generally very happy. Anyway, this woman told me that I needed to go down to Tucson, or I was already in Tucson. I needed to go to this place, this women's only shelter for like broke ass women, to do another 3 months of therapy, right? So I go to this place, and the food is horrible, and we're 4 girls to a room, and it's like super ghettoville. So like, I've got to try to act like I'm tough and gangster, and I start taking on the inclination, the speech patterns of everyone around me, who are all these like, gangster girls and like overweight, women that are poor and uneducated and stuff. And this is who I'm trying to fit in with. And so anyway, and I couldn't masturbate. I couldn't come. There were no men around, and I couldn't masturbate because we were like 4 girls to a room. And so by like month 3, I'm not progressing. In fact, I'm getting worse. And somewhere around the 2nd month, I started going around like if something doesn't happen soon, I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna kill myself, and I'm feeling crazy, blah blah blah. Okay. Hello, I hadn't fucking come in 2 months, right? As someone coming off of heroin, I hadn't come in 2 months, right? This is a huge problem. But of course, no one recognized that. So I went to the psychiatrist, and this guy puts me on this large dose of Lamictal, which is Lamictal is a fucking, what's it called? It's it's an anti-bipolar, antipsychotic, okay? I don't need Lamictal, so I started taking Lamictal, and I go from like and the food was really poor quality too. So I had already gone up from like 125, 130. Over rehab, maybe gotten up to the first rehab, like 135, 140. And then at this place, I ballooned up from like 140 to like 195. And at one point, my mom even said, like, I didn't pay $50,000 for you to come home and be fat, because I like visited home and I had this court case stuff. And she was like a cunt to me. And then my stepdad like broke the window, like throwing shit because my mom had called me fat. And like the whole thing was it's just this crazy triangle stuff. So anyway, I left the rehab, and I was like 195 pounds. Like they kicked me out finally. Like I was like, it took me 5 months to do the 3-month program, because I didn't really, I didn't give a shit, and they wouldn't let me graduate because I wouldn't say that I wouldn't have a drink. of alcohol, and I wouldn't buy the party line of NA. And so finally they just had to move me on. And then this guy started like courting me, who was like a speed guy basically. And his girlfriend or his baby's mother had been in the same rehab, and he'd seen me, and he liked so-called Jewish girls. He was like a neo-Nazi guy, which I didn't know that until I'd already slept with him. But anyway, and he was just very, very, like meth, backwoods, gross kind of guy. But my self-esteem was so low that I ended up with hanging out with this guy for a little bit, until he put a gun to my head and tried to kill me because he had been up for 4 days. So anyway, I go to this homeless. So I take the bus. I'm completely on my own. I take the bus up to Phoenix, and I go to the homeless shelter. And there was, and I think I'm not sure if I was clean at all, maybe a little bit. But then I was able to get some heroin, and then they kicked me out for doing heroin. And this older guy left with me and took me someplace. He was like in his 60s, and he'd been in prison like most of his life. Like his name was Tiny, and he was like this 300-pound Mexican guy. I still have a picture of him somewhere, like in an orange shirt, because he was in prison. And so I lived with him and his friend Sal. Sal was like this Mexican gangster, not really gangster, more like a shoplifter. Like he would wear, he was like this dark-skinned Mexican guy who looked kind of like a rat, and like his features were very rat-like. And he would wear a black trench coat. And he would go. He was a notorious shoplifter. He would go into like any sort of like Walgreens or whatever, and he'd be in there like 30 seconds, and he'd come out, and he would have like 26 large bottles of Jergens lotion, like in his trench coat. It was insane. He would get caught sometimes, but like he wouldn't fuck around and do like shoplifting. Like I've shoplifted in the way that like, okay, well if that vanilla bean is, $26, okay, I might put that in my purse, but I'm still buying a lot of stuff. He would just go in, fucking boom, 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 fill himself up and walk out, like really fast, just grab the, and sometimes he would get, things that were not actually cost effective, like big things of shampoo or something, but it was stuff, and so we'd drive around to beauty salons and sell that, and then of course if I got money, they would, they told me these little foils were $20. And so they would get a foil, and then I'd have to give them half of it. Well, it turns out the foils were $10. So I'd give them a 20, and they'd get 1.5 foils from me, and I would get half a foil. Fuck those dudes. But anyway, they let me live with them for like months, and every day I would cry. I would cry because I felt like I was letting down my parents, and I wasn't living my own life. But I just didn't know what to do. And the thing is, like, at some point, you've got to live a life that pleases yourself. If you don't like the life that you're living, no matter who you're trying to do it for or what you believe, right, the mythology that you have that you owe something to your religion or you owe something to your parents, you're gonna short circuit at some point. This is like what a midlife crisis is. Basically, I had a midlife crisis at like 6 years old or 7 years old. That's when I started having my midlife crisis. And, like, it's just, anyway, I'm ready to be done with it. I'm ready to be so done with my midlife crisis. And I'm ready to start my life. And I wanted to, like, relapse for a week and make videos and stuff. And clean out this room that I've been avoiding because it's so emotional and, like, scary for me. But I ended up relapsing for 2 months and fucking laying in bed. And anyway, so the situation reminded me. So I'm with this old guy, and I'm not trying to call my friend old. Like, he wasn't. Like, one of my friends was like 50, and one of my friends was like 60. But the one guy was drinking, the other guy's on methadone. Tiny ended up getting on methadone, and he was just happy to have like a young girl around. It made him feel like a man or something. But I would like cry every day, and then there was there was a kitten in the neighborhood, so I take care of this kitten. But finally, I went to stay with my dad. And, like, Tiny was kind of retarded. Like, he told me, like, he sent me a letter, and he sent me a letter with dope in it once. So, I made it 3 weeks off of it, and then he sent me, like, a foil. And I did that, and then I was sick again, coming off of that. And then, of course, I read on the internet about this miracle drug called Suboxone. And so, my dad drove me back to Phoenix to get me on Suboxone after I'd been clean a month. Legally, they can't do that anymore. If you've been clean a month, you got to show dirty if you get Suboxone. You can't just put someone on Suboxone to addict them to it. Which I'm gonna have to go to a Suboxone detox this time, but I'm not ever going on long-term Suboxone again. Fuck all that. Why? Why? Like, no way, dude. I'm just gonna have to go through the pain, and I'm not taking Ibogaine again too. I've flood dosed on Ibogaine 4 times, and I'm over it. I don't. It's too much like psychedelic. I'm gonna go through the Suboxone detox, and then I'm gonna fucking just live a life I want to live. And like my parents, I can't be guilted anymore. I've lost like the love of my life. I've lost my baby. I've lost my youth. I used to be fucking gorgeous, beautiful. Thankfully, not lost my mind. I haven't lost my sanity, but I've lost my beauty. I've lost my health. I've lost my only child and my only true love. I've lost everything. And so, like, the rest of my life from now on out, it's like, I'm just going to show up and do the best I can. And people can really shove it if they're trying to guilt me, like, all the stuff that went down with my parents. And, like, they're wounded people. And, of course, hurt people hurt other people. But it's just, like, life is not about critiquing other people, and it's not about trying to make yourself feel better than other people. Like, I don't think life is about that. And I definitely, I have a tendency to make people feel uncomfortable if I live with them. Like, I really do need to live alone. I'm an only child. I hope I can figure out a way to live, like, semi-alone, like, with my son, and then have him go to, like, eventually, ideally, like, his grandparents, my parents, if we could ever work something out. But, like, it's interesting because people will say, like, anything to try to make you feel bad about yourself in order to restrict your movement. But, like, everyone has an agenda. There's no one who's agendaless, whether it's your spiritual teacher or your parent or your boss or your coworker, whatever. Everyone's got a fucking agenda, and you gotta look out for you, period. So that's one thing about, like, so anyway, staying with older guys, right? Having them, like, pay for me but not being happy with the situation. That's, like, a repetitive thing from, like, from my dad. And like, so it's interesting because, just our cycles, like, repeat over and over again until, of course, we, like, are able to make that 1 degree of change to get out of it and stop on the hamster wheel. Anyway, I'm going to stop this video now. But I feel better. I feel so much better. Like, I was, like, just, like, so fucked up. And now I feel so much better. Just because I'm, like, expressing, basically. Alright. Bye.